as you know, scientific progress has been largely driven by data and experimentation. And that's the basis on which theory is built on. So far, however, we didn't have experimental approaches for socioeconomic systems that were comparable to those in physics, chemistry, or biology. And this is now changing in this very moment. The question is, can we build a CERN for society? Can we measure what's going on in real time, maybe? And in fact, we're getting close to this because we're all carrying on these smartphones, smart devices that contain not only the possibility to make phone calls. This is actually not what I'm using my smartphone for. I'm using it for all sorts of other things like organizing my agenda and emails and so on and so on. But there's something more interesting in these smartphones, which are those sensors, about 15 of them in every single smartphone. And you can measure a lot of things with them. Acceleration, location, noise, whatever comes to mind almost. And so we could potentially connect all these smartphones with each other to create something like a global measurement system. Now that sounds scary on the one hand. On the other hand, of course, also everyone would immediately see there's a huge potential for such a thing. So could we build the system in a way that we can trust it? And so the question is, what does it take? Trust certainly requires transparency, and it requires probably also control. And for that very reason, I think we should build this system as a citizen web. We're now entering a time of the digital revolution. The Internet of Things is coming up. In about 10 years' time, we'll have 150 billion sensors distributed in the world now, 10 per person. Every room, every thing will be actually using these kind of sensors in order to measure what's happening around them. Coffee machines, fridges, toothbrushes, and whatever. So just imagine every single step you do or every word you say would be recorded and stored forever by a company or by a government. Now, we wouldn't feel very comfortable about this. And that's exactly why we shouldn't wait a company or a government to build this system for us, but we should build it ourselves and manage it ourselves, because then we're in control. So the issue is to build an information system that is controlled by you. And you started to do this, so we have all these sensors in our smartphone, and you can turn them on and off, and you can also decide whether you want to record only for yourself or whether you want to share these data with others. Moreover, you can see there's a noise sensor over here. Yeah? So what we've done is we've taken the microphone, but we're not using it as a microphone because we don't want anyone to listen into what you're saying, changing with your girlfriend or boyfriend or whatsoever. So it should be private, of course, and that's why we have degraded the sensor to turn it into a noise sensor. And again, you can turn it on and off as you like. The other thing is more and more data happen to be recorded about us. This is just a fact of life. And so the question is, how could we gain control again of all these data? And the idea is that we should have personal data stores, basically a mailbox for data, where all the data that happen to be recorded about you would be sent, and then we could manage these data and say, okay, well, maybe I'm reasonably happy to share my shopping data with businesses because I want to get personalized services or products, or maybe you're not, so you decide. Maybe you want to share your social network data with your friends, or family, or colleagues, and maybe not. Maybe you want to share your medical data with your doctor, maybe not. So basically, you should have this possibility to decide this, and basically, whatever has been set by you in your personal data store would have to be taken into account by companies that would like to use such data. Okay, so wouldn't it be nice to have such a system that's controlled by us, by the citizens? And why don't we create such a participatory system? An open data source, but real-time, something like a real-time data Wikipedia, a data commons that we can use for our own purposes, because as scientists, you know very well, we'd like to have data to do research, exciting research, learn about the world, fix problems that are around us, but we lack the data in many cases, If we wait for Google to give us their data, or for Facebook to give us their data, or Apple to give us their data, okay, we can wait forever. It's not going to happen. Or NSA, maybe we don't even want to have this data, right? So the issue is we need to create this data ourselves. And we can do this now. So why don't we do that now? So the success principle of this approach is basically give and take. Yeah? So you could take data that are jointly produced for your own purposes, science, business, whatever. So we'll come back to this in a moment. But for this to work well, of course, you should also share some data. Yeah? You decide which data to share. But it's clear, if you want to create this together, then we need to produce data, right? Same thing with source code. I think we should share those source codes that we use to do measurements for a number of reasons. First of all, also for transparency, because some people want to check that the measurement procedures are not listening to what you're telling to your girlfriend or mother or grandpa or whatever. So transparency is needed, as I said. The other thing is, as we open up these source codes, you can download these source codes and modify them to build a new measurement procedure. So we would have maybe 100 ideas what we could measure, and then our capacity to build measurement procedures is limited. But you have another 100 ideas, and another 100, and another 100. And so you could just modify those measurement procedures easily by yourself, or sit together with some colleagues or friends and make it happen and upload it again. So other people can take it, modify it, and so on. So we get better and better measurement procedures, and it would be a very powerful ecosystem of measurement procedures, of information, of innovation that we build together. Of course, the more things are out there, the more things we can build easily. So that's the idea, to create new opportunities for everyone, for business, for politics, for science, and for the citizens in the first place. And if set up well, enabling users, customers, citizens will lead to better services, better products, better businesses, better neighborhoods, smarter cities, and smarter societies. We now have the technology to do this. We just need to wake up and see that now we can change the world to the better. If you think things around you are not perfect enough, now we have the possibility to coordinate ourselves much better and to come up with solutions in areas where business and politics hasn't been able to succeed. And with a micropayment system on top, we could even allow you to make business, to establish your own company, a consultancy, for example. You could come up with services, with new products, and with a 3D printer, your products could be actually produced at home, or in any place where you sell your product, be it USA or Japan or Israel or wherever you want to sell your product. So we can now produce things at home. And this is not anymore just a dream. It sounds like a dream, and like a utopia, but it's not, because we have started to work on this. There's a team of dedicated young people who are extremely excited about this new technology and the possibilities that it implies. And it's a lot of fun to work on it, because we have entirely new possibilities. We can turn sensor output into music, for example. We can turn cities into adventures. We can play games. We can do science. We can do a lot of new things. You know, it's just like science fiction almost. But a few years ago, iPhones and iPads were science fiction too. It's doable now. You should understand this. So what can we do with the planetary nervous system? 5 things at least, which is, first of all, real-time measurement of the state of our techno-socio-economic environmental systems, that means of the world around us. And with this information, we can create greater awareness of the chances and risks that would support our decision-making, actually everyone's decision-making. Can use the data also to promote science, in particular global system science. It means really understand what's going on and why. What are the hidden forces behind socioeconomic change? This can now be understood. We can also use that knowledge then to build self-organizing systems, and we can eventually also use these systems to support collective intelligence. Because the problems in the world have become so complex that no single individual in the world can understand them anymore. And no supercomputer system, not even a super intelligent system, you know, if it exists or will exist, could do this. Our world is combinatorially complex, and now distributed collective intelligence has this ability to come up with combinatorial solutions, combinatorial collective intelligence, and that's why I think this is a superior approach for a number of other reasons too, by the way. So let's go into this a little bit more. Measuring the world in real time. And in fact, you know, my young team really wanted to know whether this is going to work, and they were exposing themselves to an environment which is particularly sensitive about privacy, which is the Chaos Computer Conference. It happened in Hamburg between Christmas and New Year. And so what they did is they wanted to measure social networks and how they change in time. And so they produced so-called beacons. The idea was not to use the GPS sensors, right? Because GPS sensors tell everything about you. Just 4 data points basically allow to identify you, yeah? So we didn't want to use GPS sensors, obviously. We wanted to measure proximity. That means we were again downgrading possibilities in order to not to be privacy invasive. And so we created these beacons over here with a 3D printer, because we wanted to be as self-sustained as possible, and it needs a battery, and it needs a small chip, and then you put it together and you distribute it to people or in groups, and so that has been done. And then you can basically measure proximity and how it changes in time. You can see there are some superstars over here, right? And they're surrounded by many other people, and of course that pattern changes over time. So this is just a proof of concept, yeah? So these kind of measurements can now be done in real time, right? And in the privacy respecting way. So what else could we do? Well, maybe we could measure distances, you know, we could build something like a smartphone-based radar system, so we're thinking about a number of pretty cool products. And you could do noise mapping of cities or entire countries or of the entire world. You know, if just enough people would use the system. We could also map luminosity. And we could start maybe mapping environmental change and who causes it. We could map resources and who uses them. We would do that together now, in the sense of, in the spirit of citizen science. And we could actually map our globe in 3D. Because using just the photographs that every one of us uploads, we can actually reconstruct buildings in 3D. So these are the locations of all the photographers, of the pictures that were downloaded by a colleague. And these are the points where the cameras have been pointing. And you can see that all these pictures can be used to create a 3D reconstruction of the Colosseum, and in fact of any place that's visited by many people in the world. I mean, any interesting place in the world can be shown in 3D. You don't have to go to this place, actually. You can do that on your computer, in principle. So, yes, we could actually build this Nervousnet together, and hopefully it would spread globally as it happened for OpenStreetMap. OpenStreetMap now has 1.5 million volunteers that are collecting data about all the streets, all the passes where people hike and so on. It's the most up-to-date map in the world, because when a disaster strikes, there's an earthquake or whatever, a road is closed down, of course a bridge collapse and all this kind of thing, it will be in this database because people update information immediately. So we could use this information to create more awareness to support better decisions, more effective actions, and more responsible behavior. So this is really about knowing more about what's going on around us, and so we can create compasses for decision makers that map not just GDP per capita in real time in a disaggregated way, but we could measure other things like social capital, which we cannot see, reputation, trust, solidarity, compliance. All of these things are important, and we can now reveal them by measurements. And this is important because we need to protect these things from damage, from destruction, because social capital is important also for economic development and well-being. And we can also map happiness, of course. We can also map disasters. And this is actually happening now in many places where disasters struck. And it helps very much the first aid teams and everyone else in order to respond to these very bad situations and help people more effectively. In fact, we had a hackathon in San Francisco about the subject of earthquake resilience. And that was very interesting because 90 people turned up in order to participate in this hackathon and come up with different solutions. So, how can Nervousnet actually help us in these kind of situations? Well, first of all, there are accelerometers in our smartphones, and as you can see here, there is a measurement signal. It's quite fine-grained in X, Y, and Z direction. And if a single smartphone is shaking, it could just mean that you're mountain biking. But if all our smartphones are shaking at the same time, then that probably means there's an earthquake and we should get out as quickly as possible out of this building. At the same time, our smartphones could alert our friends, our colleagues, our family of this earthquake. So it would give them a few extra seconds to get out of the building into a safe place. And therefore, the idea is actually not to measure what individuals are doing. We are more interested in collective measurements, right? In aggregated data, in average data, and many of the things that are really important and interesting can be done based on aggregated data. Now, once the earthquake has struck, the question is, what do you do? And in fact, these people at the San Francisco Hackathon came up with a number of astonishing solutions within just one day. And Amigo Cloud, for example, said, okay, here is an app that allows you to take pictures of anything that needs to be paid attention to. A bridge that has collapsed, a road that is broken, a building that is damaged, you photograph it, you annotate it, and as soon as you have connectivity, this information is uploaded to a web page that everyone can see. So those people in the neighborhood, the emergency response teams, the government, so everyone who needs to know about this would be informed immediately, much faster than that happened in the past. Well, there's a problem though, because after a disaster, often your communication infrastructure doesn't work. Fortunately, however, now there are ad hoc networks that can be built between smartphones. In fact, there is Fire Chat now, and that allows smartphones to talk to each other, in principle. So you don't need to have this centralized communication infrastructure to communicate and exchange information. But after some time, your battery would be empty, right? So we need to fix this problem, and that's actually what Charge Beacon does. So these are basically silicium cells that are producing electricity and allow you to charge your smartphones. By the way, also, it would attract people from the neighborhood, so people would talk to each other about the situation, come up with solutions how to fix the problem. And in fact, there is another solution, Helping Hands, that actually allows people to help each other. So you could say, okay, I ran out of water, or I need some baby food, or can somebody help me to support my grandfather, or does anybody have some clothes that he doesn't need, or whatsoever. And neighbors could then respond and say, oh, actually, I have some stuff at home that I am happy to share. Now, and in fact, in disaster situations, people are surprisingly happy to help and share. Nobody can just sit at home in front of the TV screen. You know, they have this desire to be useful. And so these devices allow you to coordinate. They give you possibilities that just haven't been out there before. So we're basically moving from this kind of top-down disaster response approach, which is kind of a military organization, you could say. You know, you're starting to collect information on the lowest level, and then this information has to go up level by level and ends up in the disaster response control center. And they're trying to come up with an optimal solution and hand out commands to those people on the level below, and then give commands to the people below, and so on and so on. Now that takes a lot of time, right? And often information is not consistent, information is lacking, other information is kind of too much to be processed, and so on. So this kind of approach has limitations. And what we seem to be heading towards is this kind of approach, which combines top-down and bottom-up in a novel way, where basically a web page or the government, you know, they would say, okay, this is the current situation, this is what we need. We need so much fuel, we need so much water, we need it here, we need it there, and so on. And then people could basically sign up and say, okay, I can do this, I can do that. And so it brings together needs and resources. And interestingly enough, in our business today, and in politics, we are often in a situation that reminds of disaster response. You know, there is suddenly a new fact that needs to be responded to immediately, a difficult situation that needs to be solved. So that is a result actually of the complexity of the systems that we have created. And so why don't we use this novel approach that combines top-down and bottom-up for other areas too, because it actually is more effective, it increases the response capacity, it frees up resources on the top for important and strategic issues and so on. So altogether we can say as the complexity of the system goes up, in order to achieve our goals well and successfully, now we need more autonomy. Of course, autonomy also requires that people would take responsibility, sure. But this is important also because of the curves shown over here. What does the digital revolution really mean? It means that processing power, shown in blue, is doubling every 18 months. You know, and for a long time that appeared to be pretty slow. You know, we didn't really see a dramatic change of our economy and society, but you know, as the exponential curve implies, basically it accelerates, and now it has really an extremely rapid pace. Data volume, however, grows even faster. It doubles every 12 months. So what does it imply? First of all, we're going from a situation where we didn't have enough data to take good decisions into a time of big data where we can take evidence-based decisions, and that's good altogether. Yeah? If we apply big data analytics in a suitable, in a scientific, and in a responsible way, then this is certainly a progress. However, what we see over here is data volume is overtaking processing power, and it has long overtaken actually what we can process. The gap, however, is opening up more and more. That means a larger and larger share of the data that has been produced will never be processed. That's dark data in a sense, you know, as we have dark energy and dark matter in the universe. And we have really to decide what is the data that we're processing. What do we want to pay attention to? If we don't know how to decide this, you know, all the data in the world won't help us. There is a flashlight effect. So like our attention only highlights a small percentage of all the signals that are recorded by the sensors of our body, we have a similar situation over here. And if we don't pay attention to the right thing, it could be disastrous to our society. In fact, you know, while people were responding to September 11, they didn't see the financial crisis come up. While they were responding to the financial crisis, they didn't see the Arab Spring come up. And also not the Ukrainian crisis and all these kind of things. So the data were out there, also with Ebola. The data were out there, but nobody paid attention to it. So that's a problem. Having all these data is not necessarily a solution. And then look at the third curve, systemic complexity. As we go on networking the world, there are ever more possibilities to come up with new products, with new systems, with new solutions. Now we can combine two things to create three things. We can combine three things to produce six things. You know, it's a mathematical function called faculty that's describing this combinatorial possibility that opens up. And even though we don't realize all the possibilities, you know, we have this more than exponential explosion of systemic complexity, and even all the data in the world wouldn't help to describe this well. So, counterintuitively, while we would think all this data would allow us to make a better job in terms of top-down control, we will lose top-down control. I think actually what we're seeing in the world is that we already lost top-down control some time ago. Of course, financial crisis not fixed. The peace in the world not fixed at all. Global warming not solved. So we have lost control, let's face it, and we need a new approach, and that approach is actually distributed control. And in order to know how to use that to create all the outcomes that we'd like to have in our economy, in our society, we need to understand how these complex systems work and how we can make the forces behind the systems work for us to self-organize the system in a favorable way. So what I'm claiming is we don't need more power, but more wisdom. And this is well understandable if we think about our body as a complex system. Because we know very well that more medicine of the same kind isn't better for our body. It's even poisonous, you know. So we really need to learn how to interfere with the system in a minimally invasive way. More of the same, and in particular more power, is not the solution. It's actually a problem in complex systems. And that's why our solutions don't work. In fact, the big unsolved problems of the world result from systemic instabilities, and the smallest of them is traffic jams. It's annoying, but you know, it's not the biggest disaster in the world. but it shows you a number of important things. In particular, even if we knew every single thought and emotion of every driver, we could not actually predict and even less prevent these phantom traffic jams from happening. So mass surveillance wouldn't fix this problem at all. Why can I claim this? Because we have a mathematical theory of these phantom traffic jams. And there's no psychology, no thinking at all in these theories. But the only thing that matters is that density increases above a certain critical threshold, and then traffic flow becomes unstable, and the slightest variation in speeds actually amplifies and creates a cascade effect, and in the end, cars are stopped, although nobody wants this to happen. So traffic jams are a prime example of a system that's systemically unstable. And it means that no matter how hard people try, how good your technology and how much data you have, you will sooner or later lose control because of this instability, the amplification, and the cascade effects. And these are our unsolved problems. Same thing actually with unstable supply chains. The beer game is a good illustration of this, and even experienced managers wouldn't manage actually to keep supply stable in these settings. And that's why we have booms and recessions. It's something like a stop-and-go phenomenon in the flow of materials which make up our economy. Crowd disasters, they happen even though nobody wants to harm anyone. Nobody wants to kill anyone, but still, sometimes dozens of people die. In some cases, several hundred people have died. How is it possible, with peaceful people like you, that suddenly people die? Again, instability, crowd turbulence makes the situation uncontrollable, and even hundreds of security forces couldn't control it. Crime, same thing, unstable social dynamics, tragedy of the commons. It's like with this free traffic flow that breaks down because it's unstable. Here, cooperation would be a favorable outcome, but it's unstable, and that's why you end up in an uncooperative state, in a situation that's bad for everyone. And conflict too, again, a social instability. And same thing with revolutions, or cascade effects in the European power grid, and so on. So you could think there's no way to solve these issues, but in fact there is. And the answer is complexity science. We can understand these phenomena. There are now models of these problems that advise us what we can do. Just we need to give up linear thinking. The solutions might be counterintuitive. They need a systemic thinking. They need a particular education. And unfortunately, we don't have enough complexity science teaching in our universities. That should be part of physics, of chemistry, of biology, of sociology, political science, economics, and so on. All these fields require complexity science in order to understand the most interesting phenomena. But it's not there, and we are paying a very high price for this. Many billions of euros we are paying because we are making stupid mistakes again and again and again. And so we really need to get out the word and how we can fix these kind of problems, because we can that the forces behind socioeconomic systems work for us in the very same way as we've learned to use the forces of nature to engineer motors and many other things. Can we use these forces behind socioeconomic systems to our favor? And it's kind of the principle in Asian martial arts. You're not fighting these kind of forces, but you're using these forces to your own advantage. So complexity science offers new approaches to address long-standing problems, and I'm illustrating this over here for traffic light control. So until today, traffic lights are controlled typically by a traffic control center, right? This traffic control center is trying to collect information from all over the city, and then it's trying to optimize basically the traffic flow through traffic light control. So it's making the best possible effort to come up with the best possible solution. It acts like a benevolent dictator. The problem, though, is that this optimization problem is an NP-hard optimization problem, and even supercomputers cannot solve it in real time. And there's a lot of variability in the system, so you should have a real-time solution. And as a result, there are simplifications made, and the best solutions are thrown away, of course unintentionally, but it just happens. And it sounds quite plausible to say, okay, how do we control this kind of system? And you would say, okay, let's control every intersection in a periodic way, and let's synchronize the cycles, problem solved. No! I mean, the most effective solutions are non-periodic, you know. You threw them all away while you thought you had a good solution. Now, can we come up with a better approach in a bottom-up way? So what if every single intersection decided by itself and trying to minimize travel times strictly of all the vehicles approaching that intersection? That's mathematically solvable. You know, there's an explicit mathematical formula. That's simple, and we can do this. And actually, that corresponds basically to this idea of the homo economicus, where each intersection acts like a homo economicus. That means every intersection separately tries to do the best possible job, you know, as we've learned, to do the best possible job ourselves. And then there is a third approach, which tries also to minimize travel times, but sometimes it interrupts the minimization of travel times if a queue grows long. In this case, we first clear this long queue before we go back to the travel time minimization. So you would think this is for sure not competitive with the homo economicus approach, which strictly minimizes travel times. You know? So this approach is other regarding in a certain sense. And now the question is, what's the best solution? I would think that homo economicus is better than the other regarding approach, and the centralized top-down control is the best. So what do you find? We find this. So queue length as a function of the utilization of the intersection capacity grows more or less linearly for top-down regulation. That makes a lot of sense, you know. I mean, it's a reasonably good job that's being done by top-down control. However, if we apply actually this selfish optimization of every single intersection, the homo economicus approach, you know, this is much better for small capacity utilization. You know, we have less than half of the queue lengths. So basically, we have an invisible hand kind of phenomenon, a self-organized coordination, and it's very flexible, and it really is much better than top-down control. But then suddenly, oops, what's that? No, suddenly queue length is exploding, and then the traffic control center says, ha-ha, that's why you need us, you know? And that's why you have to pay millions to build the traffic control center, because you know, here, where there's a lot of traffic, you know, we're doing a much better job than if every single intersection decides by itself. But what happens if we have this other regarding approach, you know? So, first of all, I need to add that Adam Smith's invisible hand obviously fails over here at a very high load of the system. Now, the other regarding approach turns out to be best actually all along the way, you know, up to the maximum capacity utilization. And that's kind of surprising, but it can be understood by the fact that this is kind of improving coordination between neighboring intersections, right? Because coordination is the issue. We want to create green waves and so on. So we can make the invisible hand work by supporting intersections and coordinating each other. And in fact, as you can see over here, we get beautiful green waves as a result of this approach, which, by the way, has been inspired by these oscillations in pedestrian flows. And it has dramatic impacts in terms of the performance of the city. So much less delays, actually. And the same thing can be done also in industrial production and so on and so on. So give me just maybe 5 more minutes. And the question is, can we also transfer this principle, this exciting self-organization, which is superior to top-down control, to our economy and to our society? And in fact, this idea has been around since a long time, actually since 300 years, that our economy could potentially self-organize. And of course, we know this invisible hand idea from Adam Smith and from others. However, unfortunately, it didn't always work. So there are market failures under certain kind of conditions, there are tragedies of the commons, financial crisis, and so on. So we cannot rely on the invisible hand to be there when we need it. However, self-government can work if we have the right kind of design principles, as has been shown by Nobel Prize winner Elinor Ostrom. So it's really an issue of the interactions that we have in the system. And in fact, we're now coming up with new solutions, such as reputation systems, and we can see it everywhere that they're improving systemic performance and quality. Is good for customers, but it's also good for sellers who can take a higher price for more quality and so on. So 300 years after the invention of the invisible hand, the Internet of Things allows us now to make it work. We combine it as an enabling technology with the knowledge of complexity science. So the golden age of complexity science is here. We can come up with practical solutions because the Internet of Things allows us to do this now. The only thing is that we need to measure all the externalities of the interactions, I mean the external effects, positive and negative ones, and create suitable feedbacks in the system to create the outcome that we'd like to have, and that can also be done in a multi-level way. That means on a societal dimension. And how do we create these kind of feedbacks? Well, for this we need to have a multi-dimensional incentive and exchange system. And that means multi-dimensional finance, not just a one-dimensional one as we have it today. So another important point is, in a diverse world, we need to create interoperability to overcome cultural barriers and many other barriers. So this is really important, and we should learn that basically every culture is based on a lot of success principles, but these success principles are often not written up. It's kind of a hidden knowledge, implicit knowledge, and if we would learn this, I call this the Culturepedia project, to really work out what are these success principles, write it up, formalize it, and then we can combine these success principles of all the countries in the world in novel ways to come up with new solutions, with new value, and in fact we can now build something like digital assistants that would help us to come up with better solutions in interaction situations, because if two people or two companies interact, there are basically 4 situations that can happen: a lose-lose situation, a win-win, a bad win-lose, and a good win-lose situation. And in these 4 different situations, we want to do different things. Yeah, we want to have digital assistants that create awareness for the situation we are in, that help us with the interactions, that protect us, and also that support value transfer, that allow us to turn good bad win situations into win-win situations. And finally, the 5th functionality of Nervousnet would be to support collective intelligence, because to solve the problems of the world, we really need to bring the best ideas of many minds together. And there are very interesting examples, as shown, for example, by the Netflix challenge, that not the best solution wins. It's diversity, the combination of good solutions, in fact averaging over the best solution and worst solutions that creates the very best solutions. So we really need to engage in building platforms that enable collective intelligence, and argument maps could be part of it, but this is really important if we don't want the world to be ruled by super intelligent artificial systems in the future. So summarizing, these are the information technology that I believe are needed for a smart digital society. A planetary nervous system that allows us to measure externalities, multidimensional feedbacks, an incentive system, digital assistance and collective intelligence. All of this can be based on distributed approaches, and building these kind of systems will really advance our societies in difficult times. So the idea is to build a networked and well-coordinated system of largely autonomous systems, rather than trying to control all of our decisions in a top-down way by personalized information, as this is currently being tried. And so now, finally, everything comes together, I believe. Science, politics, business, and society, because we can massively increase efficiency by building on self-organizing, self-improving systems. This approach that I have actually explained over here is compatible with democratic principles, in particular with participation, with individual autonomy of decision-making, with free entrepreneurship. But we would also consider externalities, and that would support other regardedness and fairness. It would support improvement of our environmental issues, and it would support cooperation, reduce conflict. So get ready. All it takes is you and your smartphone. Team up with your colleagues and join the Nervousnet team. So let's do this together. Thank you very much.